To change is to think, act, and feel differently in the same environmental condition, and to do it enough times that that environment begins to change because you're changing. And nothing changes in your life until you change. I think so many people walk in to do the meditation when they leave this place, and there is an energy, there is the spirit of change and transformation present. It's very infectious. Our research shows people change people. And when you're kind, other people are kind. When you love, other people love. When you're caring, other people care. It's an emergent consciousness in so many ways. And so, to me, that's the feeling you should strive for. That feeling right there is the feeling you have to get up when you finish your meditation. You gotta get up feeling that same feeling. And you gotta remember that feeling enough times that you can bring it up on your own. Because if you can't, you won't be able to bring it up on your own. And nobody's going to give you that feeling in the end but you. So I don't care if it takes an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours for us to get there. I just know that when I do get there, I'm so happy that I do. And if it takes that long, I swear to you, when it's the hardest, it matters the most. So the excuse that we can give on a regular basis is to shrink back into mediocrity and to say, I need the event to do this. Well, that's just another thing that we are unconsciously agreeing to and believing, that it's better to do it in a community than to do it on my own. Well, if you truly believe in the quantum model, by you showing up, there is a collective consciousness that you can tap into every day. Every day. You don't have to be in the presence to move into that momentum. And so, God, taking a little time for ourselves every single day is such a service to the world. Being alone without your device or without any stimulation and really getting ready to do your meditation. I would never sit down and do my meditation until I was very clear in my think box how I was going to do it, what I wasn't going to do, who I wasn't going to think about, the things I know I'm going to get to anyway. What am I going to do if this thing comes up? How am I going to move through this? I got 1,000 thoughts, 1,000 decisions today. I got too much going on, all of that stuff. That's when you immerse yourself back in the world. That's when you leave the monastery and return back. And you got to start reminding yourself the thoughts you're not going to think. You got to become so conscious of those unconscious thoughts that you don't go unconscious to them and believe them. You got to become super aware of how you're speaking, how you're acting, what you're saying. If you're complaining, if you're judging, like that's not who you truly are. We're going to think, okay, what emotions bring me down to that place where I seamlessly go unconscious and we default back to that old personality. That's the same. That feeling is the past, and I'm going to believe I'm in the past and I'm going to behave like I am, and I'm going to think like I am, and I will be in my past. Okay, how many times am I going to do that till I stop doing that? This is the work. And then how do I want to think? How do I want to program my mind? How am I going to create a new belief? Let me put my intention and my attention behind it and repeat it enough times until I remember to think this way. It's not that hard. What choices am I going to make that I know that I could possibly not want to make? Let me just remind myself of the choice I'm going to make, the thing I'm going to do. Let me review it enough times so I remember to do it. Even though if I don't want to do it, I'm going to do it anyway. Let me rehearse it. Rehearsing is priming the brain for the action. It's changing the brain to look like you already did it. How am I going to feel? When I get up from this meditation, how much love for my future could I be in? And let me remember this feeling. If I have to remember it 1,000 times, I'm going to keep bringing it up, keep bringing it up, keep bringing it up, so I can bring it up on my own. That's the work. And so making time for our precious selves, to love ourselves enough to disconnect from our life long enough to change our life, to disconnect so that we can reconnect. If people get up from their meditations and they believe less in their future than when they started, it's because they didn't overcome the feeling of themselves, the habit of themselves, the hardwired belief, perception, or attitude. Some people actually do this work and they believe more in their future when they get up in that state. And the people who fall from grace, I've done it enough times. If you're truly committed to that future and you defaulted back to the old personality, you got one of two choices. Stay there and find somebody else who's doing the same, and use each other to reaffirm your addiction to victimization and call that normal. And that's a social agreement that we make. But the person who separates the sacred from the mundane says, in the light of all eternity, it's never going to be the right moment, especially when I feel this way. Let me take a break here and let me get back into the feeling of my future so I can believe it again. And when it's the hardest, it matters the most. And so the events are a preparation for people to practice becoming somebody else, so that when they turn back into their lives, they are somebody else. That they literally have become somebody else, and they catch themselves from going unconscious. And how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? That's the moment of change. So I just want to be very clear that it's not easy getting 2,000 people to that state of mind and body. It's a lot of words. It's a lot of times to overcome themselves. It's a lot of opportunities to practice. And we want to give people the tools so that they have within their reach something to do when they return back into their lives. And so it's not as hard as we think it is if we sit down and do it with the same passion and the same intent on our own. And that's a great service, not only for the collective of the group, but for everybody in your life. For everybody in your life. You're just different than everybody else. So it's easy to excuse that and say, oh, well, it's better at the events. But I can tell you, you really get serious about doing it, just like you get serious about anything that you do in your life with the same passion. You sit down like that, you'll really enjoy it. You'll really, really enjoy it. Some critics may categorize this body of work as faith healing. I'm actually fine with that accusation at this point in my life, because what is faith, but when we believe in thought more than anything else? Isn't it when we accept a thought, independent of the conditions in our environment, and then surrender to the outcome to such a degree that we live as if our prayers were already answered? Sounds like a formula for the placebo. We've always been the placebo. Maybe it's not so important that we pray rigorously every day to have our prayers answered, but that we instead get up from our meditations as if our prayers have already been answered. If we accomplish this daily, we are at a level of mind where we're truly living in the unknown and expecting the unexpected. And this is when the mysterious knocks on our door. The placebo response is about being healed by thought alone. Thought by itself, however, is unmanifested emotion. Once we embrace that thought emotionally, it begins to become real. That is, it becomes reality. A thought without an emotional signature is void of experience, and thus it is latent, waiting to be made known from the unknown. As we initiate a thought into an experience and then into wisdom, we are evolving as human beings. When you look into the mirror, you see your reflection and know that whom you are seeing is the physical you. But how do the true self, the ego, and the soul see themselves? Your life is a mirror image of your mind, your consciousness, and who you really are. There are no schools of ancient spiritual wisdom sitting high on mountaintops in the Himalayas waiting to initiate us into becoming mystics and saints. Our lives are our initiation into greatness. Maybe you and I should see life as an opportunity to reach greater and greater levels of self so that we can overcome our own limitations with more expanded levels of consciousness. That's how a pragmatist, instead of a victim, sees it. To abandon the familiar ways in which we've grown accustomed to thinking about life in order to embrace new paradigms will feel unnatural in the beginning. Frankly, it takes effort and it's uncomfortable. Why? Because when we change, we no longer feel like ourselves. My definition of genius then is to be uncomfortable and to be okay with being uncomfortable. How many times in history have admirable individuals who struggled against outdated beliefs, living outside of their comfort zones, been considered heretics and fools, only to later emerge as geniuses, saints, or masters. In time, they became supernatural. But how do you and I become supernatural? We have to begin to do what's unnatural. That is, to give in the midst of crisis, when everyone is feeling lack and poverty, to love when everyone is angry and judging others, to demonstrate courage and peace when everyone else is in fear, to show kindness when others are displaying hostility and aggression, to surrender to possibility when the rest of the world is aggressively pushing to be first, trying to control outcomes, and fiercely competing in an endless drive to get to the top, to knowingly smile in the face of adversity, and to cultivate the feeling of wholeness when we're diagnosed as sick. It seems so unnatural to make these types of choices in the midst of such conditions, but if we repeatedly succeed, in time we'll transcend the norm, and we too become supernatural. And most important, by your being supernatural, you give others permission to do the same. Mirror neurons fire when we observe someone else performing an action. Our neurons mirror the neurons of that other person, as though we were performing the same action. For example, when you see a professional dancer dancing the salsa, you will dance the salsa better than you did before. If you watch Serena Williams hit a tennis ball, you will hit the ball better than you did before. If you observe someone leading a community with love and compassion, you'll lead in your life in the same way. And if you witness someone self-healing from a disease by changing his or her thought processes, you'll be more prone to do the same. It's my hope that you'll realize that the ultimate belief is the belief in yourself and in the field of infinite possibilities. And when you merge the belief in yourself as a subjective consciousness with your belief in an objective consciousness, then you're balancing intention and surrender. It's tricky though. If you overintend, that's called trying. You'll get in your own way and always fall short of your vision. If you over-surrender, you'll become too lazy, apathetic, and uninspired. But if you combine a clear intention with an uncompromising trust and possibility, then you'll step into the unknown, and that's when the supernatural starts to unfold. I think that you and I are at our best when we're in this state of being. When you feel so whole that you no longer care whether it will happen, that's when amazing things materialize before your eyes. I've learned that being whole is the perfect state of creation. I've seen this time and time again in witnessing true healings in people all over the world. They feel so complete that they no longer want, no longer feel lack, and no longer try to do it themselves. They let go, and to their amazement, something greater than they are responds, and they laugh at the simplicity of the process. I'll certainly be the first to raise my hand to confess that I don't know it all. My greatest joy, though, is when I've contributed to someone's personal growth in some way. I've seen transformation on many faces, and I can say that independent of culture, race, or gender, we all look the same when we're freed from the bonds of our own self-limiting beliefs. There's a principle that I adore in biology called emergence. Have you ever seen a school of fish all breaking in the same direction at the same time? Or a flock of hundreds of birds in flight, all moving together as one consciousness, as one mind? When you look at this phenomenon, you might think that all the individuals in the group are following one leader who's showing the way. It appears that the synchronistic movements of hundreds or even thousands of individual organisms all doing the same thing at the same time is a top-down phenomenon. But that's not what's really happening. It turns out that this level of unity takes place as a bottom-up phenomenon. The group actually has no leader. Everyone is leading. They're all part of the same collective consciousness, doing the same thing at the same time. It's as if the whole is connected in a field of information beyond space and time. One community is presenting as one mind. One organism is created from each individual becoming one. There's power in numbers. We've been programmed and conditioned into a subconscious belief that if we lead with too much passion and change the world, will surely be assassinated. Most great leaders who've altered the course of history with a profound message get it in the end. Whether we're talking about Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, John Lennon, Joan of Arc, William Wallace, Jesus of Nazareth, or Abraham Lincoln, an unconscious stigma exists that suggests that all visionary leaders must give their lives for the truth. But maybe we've finally arrived at the time in history when it's more important to live for the truth than to die for it. If hundreds, thousands, or even millions of human beings embrace a new consciousness based on possibility, align their actions with their intentions, and live by greater universal laws of love, kindness, and compassion, a new consciousness will emerge and we'll experience true oneness. Then we might just have too many leaders to remove. So if on a daily basis, you're committed to demonstrating your personal best and you're overcoming selfish states of mind driven by stress hormones, and I'm doing the same, then together we're changing the world by changing ourselves. And if enough of us are tempering ourselves into more whole human beings, then as the individual communities we live in emerge around the world, they'll eventually consume the present mindset of reality based on fear, competition, lack, hostility, greed, and deception. In time, the old will be completely consumed by the new. A particular concern of mine is that we now live in a world where scientific research is commingled with self-interest and often influenced by profits. So I question whether we're being told the truth about the way things really are. It's up to us then to discover the truth for ourselves. Imagine a world inhabited by billions of people, just like a school of fish living as one, where everyone is embracing similar uplifting thoughts connected to unlimited possibility. And these thoughts allow people to make more inspired choices, demonstrate more altruistic behaviors, and create more enlightening experiences. People would then no longer be living by the survival-based emotions we're so familiar with now, feeling more like matter than energy, separate from possibility. Instead, they'd be living by more expanded, selfless, heartfelt emotions, feeling more like energy than matter, connected to something greater. If we could do this, then an entirely different world would emerge, and we would be living by a new credo based on the open heart. That's what I see when I close my eyes to meditate.